So let's move on now to some rabbit holes because you cannot make this stuff up. Back to meaw.com. Who was Hannah Clear? Madison Mogen's rumored ex-roommate killed herself after being bullied, allegedly. Online sleuths have independently investigated the Idaho murder case and have devised several theories about why someone was out to kill the four victims by Varnica Srivastava, December 9th, 2022. A new hypothesis recently circulated on Twitter that one of the victims in an Idaho murder case was a bully and their actions had led to the suicide of Madison Mogen's former roommate. This article is based on sources, and I cannot verify this information independently. And of course, this is MINDSHOCK. I do not claim anything is true or untrue here. The entire motto of the podcast is, of course, the only thing we know for sure is that we don't know anything for sure. But I really don't understand why all these trigger goofs are going around and just getting instantly triggered at anybody theorizing. Now, obviously, anybody calling for any kind of harassment, I mean, that's inexcusable. But simply objectively discussing theories without claiming they are true or untrue, I mean, anything to keep the awareness up and keep pressure on law enforcement and keep this in the public consciousness to make sure that true justice is obtained. I mean, how is that a bad thing? Not to mention, obviously, in certain cases, online sleuthing does lead to solving cases. So the article here: the deaths of 4 University of Idaho students have rocked the small and usually peaceful college town. All 4 victims, Kaylee Gonzalez, Madison Mogen, Xana Coronado, and Ethan Chapin, were killed in a 3-story rented home off campus in the early hours of November 13th. They were all 20 to 21 years old. Police have not yet identified the suspect or suspects in the case. Online sleuths have independently investigated the Idaho murder case and have devised several theories about why someone would want to kill the 4 victims. A new hypothesis recently circulated on Twitter that one of the victims in an Idaho murder case was a bully and their actions had caused a former roommate to take her own life. Who was Hannah Clear? A Twitter user claimed the quadruple homicide is connected to Hannah Clear, who was supposedly an ex-roommate and shared her dorm room with one of the Idaho victims. As per claims made in the tweet, they bullied and harassed Clear, who eventually took her own life February 24th, 2022. The user wrote, Hannah Clear took her life in February. She shared a dorm with one of the victims and got bullied. Her birthday, November 15th. With the post, the user has even shared 2 images. One of the images supposedly of Hannah Clear, which is captioned, Hannah was born on November 15th, 2000, and passed away February 24th, 2022 at the age of 21. A user from Instagram had commented on Madison Mogen's post after she died, commenting, "You deserved everything that happened to you, especially after what you did to that poor girl. You elitists are all the same. I'll be reserving my spit once they properly bury you." I mean, that is an insane post, of course. That's pretty crazy. These hostile comments were made by Instagram users on Madison's profile as these bullying theories were pushed by internet conspiracy theorists, but there is absolutely no proof about if these theories hold any water or if they have even a shred of truth to them. Despite the fact that they are still unaware of whether the attacker specifically targeted the students or their apartment, police highlighted their concerns about the incidents once more on December 1st. Although no suspects have been identified or a murder weapon has been located, the public has been urged to come forward with any information that might help solve the case. So, a couple of points here. First of all, to those, there's people claiming, again, I have no knowledge of this case and this ex-roommate. But people committing murder often stage it as a suicide. And people who actually are legitimately suicidal and have even voiced these suicidal tendencies or thoughts of any kind or even plans, there's no magic Dungeons and Dragons spell in the universe where if you want to commit suicide, somehow that means no predators, no murderers, nobody looking to harm you will do it. There's no magic protection spell. So I don't know why all these people discussing true crime, especially so-called true crime aficionados, they're that utterly clueless that they think that just because someone might be planning to commit suicide or is suicidal, that means there's zero chance any kind of murder would ever target them for any reason. Really weird. Or particularly target them and then stage it as a suicide if they thought there was a greater chance of them getting away with it, particularly if an individual was really suicidal. So again, just keeping that in mind, I'm not saying that's the case here, obviously. There's no way to know that. I'm not claiming this is the case here. But if this was only one rabbit hole, I mean, there seem to be quite a few here. Because there's also, and if these really are murders, so this average of 0 murders in Moscow, it might not be true. Because we have yet another death here, Hudson Lindau. Another University of Idaho student's death this year sparks speculation. So also on Mia here by Varnica Srivastava, December 7, 2022. Does anyone care to explain this? University of Idaho student Hudson Lindau was found dead in Paradise Creek. This case has shaken the whole town as the investigation continues. Still, with no suspects and arrests in hand, the growing pressure from the victim's family and speculation from internet sleuths have made this case more complex and fragile. Recently, a Twitter user revealed other chilling details from Idaho that were previously shared on Facebook, but about someone else who wasn't a victim of the aforementioned incident. How did Hudson Lindau die? The user has unveiled an individual named Hudson Lindau who was found dead in Paradise Creek January 5th, 2022. His death was due to accidental drowning, but this user has alarmed some speculating questions about his death. The post has even scrutinized the police of Moscow and its working authorities in Lindau's case. The post read, "I have questions." Moscow law enforcement has been running with this whole "nothing like this has ever happened here" narrative. So does anyone care to explain this? University of Idaho student Hudson Lindau was found dead in Paradise Creek. You read that right. Another student from University of Idaho died earlier this year. Wait, what? This is stating he was found dead May 1st, 2022, not January? Not January 5th, found dead? Okay, I don't know if this is a typo or whatever. Context, April 30th, 2022, the night before, Delta Tau Delta held its 90th annual ball. Xana, Maddie, Jake, and JS were all in attendance. Hudson's body was found the next morning in the creek right outside Greek Row. Hudson's death was ruled an accidental drowning. The post further read, could mean literally nothing, but also here's a picture of Hudson outside of the girl's house, and a map to see where his body was found in relation to the frat sororities. One of Hudson's friends, blurred out in the photo, is Delta Tau Delta's president. The same frat JS was supposedly kicked out of. And riddle me this, where are all the stories on this investigation? Police immediately said there was no foul play upon finding the body. How? What led to him ending up in the creek that night? Everyone was just like he drowned and moved on. The last post read, not trying to create conspiracy theories here, but for a small town, there are sure some crazy coincidences. Make it make sense. And that's the other thing, too. Like, if this is, like, a big party house, I mean, a lot of people would have connections to this house. And if some of these people end up dead, that doesn't necessarily mean there's a link to the people in the house. The information provided above by the user has no confirmation. It's just a theory and speculation shared by the user. We are not sure whether these cases have any kind of tie with the recent Idaho student's murder case. Current status on Idaho murder case. Their housemates, Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funk, reportedly witnessed the executions, but managed to flee uninjured. They allegedly found the bodies and woke up hours later to call 911. Police in Idaho said that Mortensen and Funk are not suspects. Despite the fact that they are still unsure of whether the attacker specifically targeted the students or their apartment, police expressed concerns about the incident once more on December 1st. Even though no suspects have been identified or a murder weapon has been located, the public is urged to come forward with any information. So, is that new? Woke up and called that? I mean, I don't know. The phrasing here is kind of weird. So, did they... Bethany is a member of the sorority Phi Beta Phi. So one of them is a sorority member, the other one is not, out of the survivors? Or are they both? Also in this Daily Mail article, a neighbor who lives in an apartment block next door and asked not to be named said the property was notable for comings and goings, often late at night. He said there's always parties at that house and people going in and out, and there's usually some noise from there. But I didn't hear any on Sunday morning. No screaming, no gunshots, nothing. That's kind of weird. Huh. So in any case, though, if this is that popular of a party house where people come and go at all hours of the night, who would be brazen enough to do this? I mean, it's, again, we go back to that, especially possibly with the police hassling people nearby. There's also another inconsistency where supposedly the front door of the house was left wide open, and yet the police state they believe the killer entered through the sliding glass door on the second floor. From Oxygen.com, it states here, Steve Consalves revealed at the Wednesday vigil that his daughter and Imogen had fallen asleep in the same bed the night they died, according to the Statesman. Gave an interview to Fox News on Saturday. He revealed further details of the murders. He claimed that he was told that his daughter's injuries were significantly more brutal than Imogen's, even though they were killed in the same bed. He also stated that Kernodle and Chapin were asleep on the second floor of the house when they were killed, and that police are speculating the killer entered the home through a sliding glass door on that floor rather than the front door on the first floor where Funk and Mortensen were asleep. Gonzalez and Mogen were asleep on the third floor. Also, he states here even though they were killed, had fallen asleep in the same bed. So does that mean they weren't planning to go to sleep? Had fallen. Again, unknown here, really. And again, I've mentioned this before. Was that a common occurrence, or were they afraid to be in different rooms for some reason? Some people also are questioning that one or both of the roommates had online activity after 3 a.m., supposedly when they were sleeping the whole time. So again, that is not verified, but just another one of these weird rabbit holes. And it's about to get even weirder. I was able to verify here through KHQ.com, nonstop local news and NBC affiliate here, that Lindau was pulled from Paradise Creek Sunday, May 1st. So the dates were correct in that Twitter post. Moscow police say a body in Paradise Creek was found Sunday, May 1st, 11 a.m. So I'm assuming they verified that this, the party or gala or whatever on Greek Row was the night before. So how many other mysterious deaths or possible suicides were ruled as such instead of murder that may have been murder in Moscow, Idaho? Actually found another one here too. The Lewiston Tribune. UI student's death raises questions. January 23rd, 2013. Associated Press. In this undated photo provided by Moscow, Idaho Police Department, University of Idaho student Joseph Weiderich is shown. The body of Weiderich, 18, was found by trackers with Latah County Search and Rescue under the Paradise Creek Bridge, police said. At this point, we don't believe any foul play is suspected, according to Moscow Police Chief David Duke. The Moscow Police Chief's name was David Duke. Okay. Here's an article from Daily News, Moscow Pullman. Student highly intoxicated at death. UI forms task forces on Greeks and on drug abuse. Weideric's BAC was twice the legal limit. Parents upset no one helped their son. Article by Brandon Max. February 15, 2013. Toxicology report for University of Idaho freshman found dead under a Moscow bridge last month shows his blood alcohol level was at least 3 times the legal limit when he left a frat party and twice the limit when his body was discovered 1 day later. Wait, how do they know it was 3 times? I guess they're just estimating. Joseph Weiderick, 18, of Haley, Idaho, had been attending a party at the Sigma Alpha Epsilon fraternity January 19th with his Theophilus Tower roommate when they were separated, and he never returned home. His body was discovered on ice under a bridge under Mountain View Road around 4 p.m. January 21st. Police determined he'd walked nearly 7 miles before falling down in the frozen Paradise Creek bed where he died of hypothermia. Moscow Police Chief David Duke said a toxicology report shows Weiderick's blood alcohol content at the time of death was 0.17, meaning it was somewhere around 0.25 to 0.3% when he left the fraternity. Marijuana was also discovered in his system. Duke said the lead investigator in the case Thursday cited Weiderick's friend Dakota Vugwert, 18, of Haley, for allegedly providing alcohol to a minor. Weiderick had gone to the fraternity party to visit with Vegwert, who was pledging there at the time. Latah County Coroner Kathy Mabbutt said she had expected other substances would have shown up in Weiderick's toxicology report. I've heard of several of the students who have been disoriented, so it certainly made me think it was something else, she said. That's all that really showed up. All of the drugs would keep absorbing, and some don't last as long. We've tested for a lot of stuff, and it came back negative. The results of the toxicology report were shared with Weiderick's parents, Bob and Michelle Weiderick, prior to its release to the public. Weiderick's mother said it is hard to be upset with the young partiers, but she is more upset with the residents her son had approached prior to his death. A woman on Highland Drive reported finding Weiderick lying on the floor just inside her house about 3 hours after he is believed to have left the party. Duke said the woman asked him to leave. Another resident on North Mountain View Road reported he'd come to her home, but she sent him to her neighbor across the street. Weiderick's footprint indicated he crossed the street and went around the neighbor's home instead, jumping a fence and crossing Paradise Creek. You can expect so much from an 18-year-old kid, but when 2 adults turned my kid away into the night, he expressed he thought he was dying and he was turned away, said Michelle Weiderick. If there is a lesson from this, it's just to learn to help each other. I think that's the thing that breaks my heart, because he could still be alive if people helped when he asked for help. Joe was not a party kid. He was not trouble in high school, she said, adding he was studying to become an architect. He definitely had the talent for it. I'm sure he would have done well. Duke confirmed Weiderick's roommate was also highly intoxicated at the SAE party and traveled south near East Palouse River Drive before correcting himself and finding his way home. Very well, we could have had 2 boys that didn't make it home that night instead of 1, said Weiderick's mother. Ahead of the release of the Weiderick's toxicology report, the University of Idaho announced Thursday morning the formation of a substance abuse and Greek life task forces. The substance abuse task force will review prevention education programs, current policies, and enforcement strategies. We have been quite aggressive this fall and earlier in providing educational programs and doing enforcement, said the Dean of Students, Bruce Pittman. And I think the events of the last few weeks have certainly made us more intent to look for ourselves and see if there's more that we can be doing. The Substance Abuse Task Force will consist primarily of student leaders, faculty, and staff, Pittman said, with a few Moscow community members. We have received confirmation from several of our student leaders, and they plan to participate, he said. It will be a relatively larger group than the Greek Task Force. The Greek Life Task Force will consist of a small group of fraternity and sorority alumni, including those who have served their national organizations in some capacity. The relationship of the UI to the Greek system will be reviewed, Pittman said, with recommendations on how the relationship should proceed in the future. There are many models about how universities are related to Greek systems that they find on their campuses, he said. Some campuses, particularly in private schools, have very intrusive models where fraternities and sororities are required to be in university residences and strictly monitored. On the other extreme, there are campuses where fraternities and sororities are not even recognized by the institution. I think we're to the point where we need to ask a question about whether the model we're using or if the university needs to adopt a different policy or strategy in regard to our Greek system. The two task forces are expected to provide university administration with reports of their findings and recommendations by late spring. I would like to work with them as soon as we can get through this hard part of our grief process, said Michelle Weiderich about the UI. From my point of view, we've all tried to keep kids from drinking for years. Maybe what we can learn from this is to teach them to watch out for each other instead of just laughing and thinking it's funny and sending them off into the night to hopefully help each other, even if it's a stranger. Okay, so another tragic case all around, but from all accounts here, it seems like this one was less suspicious and there was some kind of an investigation. Although I can't find anything regarding Hudson Lindau in that department. Also, there seems to be some kind of a troubled history here with these sororities and fraternities. Like, how far back does this go? And also, I don't have the numbers here, but what are the average amount of deaths, suicides, bodies being found in the creek at any university with a particular population per capita, so we can compare it to the University of Idaho? Does it really stand out, or does it not? But either way, we have a minimum of 2 deaths here with potential circumstances involving similar groups of people in these Greek fraternities and sororities. So, again, might not mean anything, or maybe it does. How would one know without objective investigation? I mean, there's definitely more questions than answers here, and there seem to be more and more questions piling up almost daily, just regarding more and more connections or theoretical connections, possible connections. What is going on here? This town does not seem to be as sleepy, as innocent, and as first portrayed, anyway. And adding in these skinned coyote pranks, this dog. I mean, people aren't really talking about the dog that was supposedly abducted and skinned not too far away from this house as well. I mean, what is going on here? What kind of activities are some of these potentially frat members or whoever else involved in? And does that have anything to do with this particular quadruple homicide? All the MindShock listeners can chime in with their own thoughts, theories, comments of any kind as we continue to investigate one of the most shocking cases, not just in modern history, but possibly ever.